I want to tell you two stories, a good story and a bad story, both about writing communities I've been a part of. I'm going to start with the bad story so that we can end on a high note and you can first learn what I think you should avoid. Then I'm going to give you something hopeful. Sound good? It's time to get to the heart of why good and not destructive writing communities are so important. Let's go. Okay, I was once in a novel writing class. It was online. It was a 12-week class, so pretty long, 3 months. And it was modeled on the feedback model, meaning each of us gave each other feedback, as many writing classes are. Well, in this particular one, it seemed to very quickly devolve into each of us sort of ripping each other's writing apart. And I don't blame the teacher who was doing the best she could to keep it from being that way, I think. But you know the saying that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link? Well, there was one member of this class, and I've kind of since noticed there always seems to be this person who would use certain creative writing education terms as if everyone should know them and would wield them like weapons. She would say things like, "What's the inciting incident?" Assuming that everybody in the class knew what an inciting incident was and that we all were just supposed to have one. Meanwhile, the teacher, who also seemed a little nervous about terms like inciting incident and whether a story had to have one, seemed so uncomfortable that she wouldn't do anything to counter this kind of remark, and it would just be left hanging in the air to quietly torment everybody in the room. We would all be sitting there wondering, what's an inciting incident? Does everyone else know what an inciting incident is? Am I supposed to have an inciting incident? Does everyone else have an inciting incident at the beginning of their books? That the teacher wasn't saying anything to confirm or deny whether the story even needed to have an inciting incident seemed to default, at least to me, to the interpretation that it did need one and that I was supposed to know what it meant. Over time, small comments like these, no matter how well-intentioned, had built an atmosphere of pretense and competition and insecurity. I started to feel more like I was at Army boot camp than I was at writing class. Like it was something I had to go to, that I was supposed to endure to prove myself. Like I had to show that I could show up for this painful, destructive thing. I had to be torn down so I could be built back up. Like it was a rite of passage that all writers were supposed to go to. The boot camp reference is probably a little ridiculous. I've never been in the military, but I was dating someone while he was at boot camp. So I don't feel like my description is that far off. But I don't think a writing class needs to feel like hazing or like the military. In fact, I now think that if it does feel like hazing, the person leading it is not doing something right. Not only is it not necessary for it to feel this way, it's damaging. Your writing community should not make you feel bad about yourself, ever. It shouldn't make you feel like you should know more than you do, or that you aren't as qualified as others in the room to be a writer, that you need to know certain terms of art, like inciting incident and midpoint and dramatic irony, in order to write a good book. You don't. When I wrote my first novel, I didn't know what any of those terms meant. You also don't need to show, not tell. You don't need to write every day. You don't need to have a ritual for writing or a place you go to write at the same time every day. You don't need an MFA. You don't need to have gone to college. I worked with a great writer last year who didn't even graduate high school. I'm not pandering here. I don't actually believe that everybody is capable of writing a book. It takes talent and a lot of perseverance. But I am saying that knowing literary jargon and being able to throw it around is not the metric of talent or potential. It's the metric of showmanship and ego and insecurity. Listen, only you know how your writing community makes you feel. You may have a friend in your writing group or writing class who shows up every week delighted to be there, who loves it and feels charged and energized by it. And great, good for that friend, but it doesn't mean you have to feel the same way. If it sucks the creative life out of you, if it drains you, I want to give you permission to acknowledge that feeling. You can just stop going to that group or class. And listen, it doesn't have to be intentional to be unhealthy and unhelpful for you. People's hearts can be in the right place. Still, you aren't the crazy one for feeling icky and discouraged. Communities like this can actually be destructive. They can suck the creative life out of you. And so I think it's wise for you to step away if that's the case. Now, I should say it doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave the community. You could change it, but that takes a lot more work and you may not be up for that. It may be easier to just start a new one or find a different one. Okay, and speaking of a different one, before I tell you my happy story, I just want to invite you to apply to my program, the Book Incubator. The link is down below this video. It's just 2 questions, takes less than 5 minutes. And if you're writing a book, you definitely want to check it out. Okay, now back to the video. I'm going to tell you now about a good writing community I've been a part of and why I think it worked so well so that you can identify what makes a good one if you want to find a good one for yourself. I don't just want to tell you about the one that I currently run. So sadly, maybe I realized I had to dig all the way back to high school to think of a really good one, but high school it was. When I was a junior in high school, I went to a summer creative writing camp in New Mexico. There were about 15 of us, all teenagers from all over the country. Every day we hiked and had creative exercises. There would be opportunities to share with each other what we wrote, and we did share a lot, but there was never constructive feedback. The purpose of sharing wasn't to allow our peers to rip apart our writing. The purpose of sharing was to connect with other writers just by sharing what we were writing. That was it. We were supposed to be creative and community with each other and to enjoy being with others who were also being creative. We weren't viewing our community as a means to an end, like as an opportunity to subject ourselves to criticism the second we produced something. And as a result, it was the most creatively prolific I had ever been. I wrote so much that week. I wrote poems, essays, journal entries, and I made friendships that I'm still maintaining to this day. 2 weeks only, when I was only 16 years old, spawned lifelong friendships. I showed up to sessions during those 2 weeks open and excited, and I left them feeling inspired and more connected to the world. I should say here that nothing about the work we were doing was easy. I was definitely being challenged on craft more than I ever had been. But even though I was challenged, at no point did I feel unqualified, because it wasn't run that way. It was run in a way that honored all of our differences and helped us lean into our individual strengths as writers. And it helped us appreciate each other's strengths as writers without feeling that we all had to be just alike. So to this day, when I think about it, I feel really warm feelings toward every person from that group. And I feel really grateful that I got to be a part of it at that pivotal moment in my life. That is a good writing community, if you can say you feel that way about it. If you want a writing community that makes you feel those ways, like you are part of something, like there are people rooting for you, like they see you and want you to succeed in the way that you uniquely are made to do, that's the kind of community that I run inside my program, the Book Incubator. And it's the kind of community I want you to find for yourself, whether it's the Book Incubator or another one. Because writing a book is a long, solitary endeavor. There is so much of it that happens alone in the echo chamber of your own mind. So having people who are on the journey with you can make the difference between succeeding and failing, because it's just too hard to do by yourself. But it can also mean the difference between it being lonely and it being full of companionship. I want you to write a book and for it to be your best possible book, but I also want you to have a good life. And a good writing community will help you have a good life while you are writing books. So whether it's my program or another community, find one for yourself. It will be worth it. If you made it this far in the video, I'm guessing that you're writing a book or want to write a book. And if so, I would love to hear from you, because when I'm not writing, my mission in life is to help talented writers write their dream books. I love it. I live for it. And this is because before I published my novels, I first had to figure out how to write one, which wasn't easy because none of the writing classes I was taking showed me how to write a novel. Not until I actually had a newborn baby and just a couple of hours to write every day did I come up with a process. And the process worked. I wrote my novel during my 8-week maternity leave. Now I teach that process in my program, the Book Incubator, and it's worked for dozens of other writers. So if you're curious to know more, I have a free video walking you through that process. You can get it by clicking below and answering just 2 questions to apply to the program. You can get the video, whether you join or not, no pressure to enroll. So just click below and tell me a little bit about you and your book. I'm excited to hear from you.